In the days when the forests of North America stretched farther than the eye could see, a child was born who would become a legend. This child was no ordinary baby. He was of such immense size and strength that the earth itself seemed to tremble with each of his first cries. His name was Paul Bunyan, and from the moment he arrived, it was clear that he was destined for greatness. The people of the small logging town where Paul was born had never seen anything like him. The cradle that held him was as large as a barn, and his parents had to hollow out a giant log just to make it. His appetite was legendary, and even as a baby, Paul ate enough to satisfy an entire herd of cows. But it wasn't just his size that made Paul special. It was his heart. From the time he could walk, Paul was known for his kindness and generosity. He helped anyone in need, always with a friendly smile and a booming laugh that could be heard for miles. One winter, the coldest anyone could remember, the snow fell so heavily that it covered the tops of the tallest trees. The people of the town were trapped in their homes, but Paul, ever curious, ventured out into the wilderness. As he wandered through the deep snow, he heard a strange sound, a low, mournful bellow. Following the sound, Paul found a young ox stuck in a snowdrift. The ox was enormous, even by Paul's standards, and its coat was as blue as the winter sky. Without a second thought, Paul dug the ox out of the snow and freed it. The grateful ox, shivering and alone, followed Paul back to his camp. Paul named the ox Babe, and the two became inseparable. Wherever Paul went, Babe was right beside him. Together, they traveled the vast wilderness, exploring forests that no one had ever seen, and their adventures soon became the stuff of legend. As Paul and Babe traveled across the land, they often found themselves needing a place to cool off after a long day's work. One particularly hot summer, Paul decided to create a series of giant lakes where he and Babe could relax. With his mighty axe, Paul carved out deep valleys in the earth, and Babe, with his powerful hooves, stomped down the land to create the basins. When they were finished, Paul filled the lakes with water from the nearby rivers, creating what we now know as the Great Lakes. These lakes were so vast that even Paul and Babe could swim in them without touching the bottom, and they became a favorite resting spot for the giant duo. The people who came after them marveled at the size and beauty of the lakes, never knowing that they were the handiwork of a giant lumberjack and his blue ox. Paul and Babe's fame spread far and wide, and soon, people came from all over to join Paul in his logging camp. The camp was like no other, with bunkhouses the size of castles and meals cooked in giant cauldrons that could feed an army. One day, while clearing a forest, Paul decided he needed a way to transport the logs more efficiently. With one mighty swing of his axe, he carved a deep trench that ran for miles. As he dragged his axe behind him, the trench filled with water, creating what would become the mighty Mississippi River. Babe would pull the logs to the riverbank, and the current would carry them downstream to the sawmills. The river was so wide that it became the main highway for transporting timber, and it wasn't long before towns and cities began to spring up along its banks. Paul was known not just for his strength but also for his legendary appetite. The men in his camp came up with creative ways to feed him and Babe, and they found the solution in pancakes, giant pancakes. The cook in Paul's camp, Sourdough Sam, created a griddle so large that it took a whole team of men just to flip the pancakes. These pancakes were so big that a single one could feed 10 men, but Paul could eat a stack as high as a house. To cook for Babe, the men used shovels to flip the pancakes, and it took barrels of syrup just to sweeten one stack. Every morning, the smell of pancakes filled the camp, and the sound of Paul's laughter echoed through the forest as he and Babe enjoyed their meal. As the years went by, the tales of Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue grew taller and taller. People told stories of how Paul had created the Grand Canyon by dragging his axe across the land, or how Babe's footsteps had carved out the Rocky Mountains. Some said that Paul and Babe had journeyed far north, where they lived in the great forests of Canada, while others believed they had gone west, where the giant redwoods stood as a testament to Paul's mighty strength. But no matter where the stories were told, one thing remained the same. Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox became symbols of the wild, untamed spirit of America. Their adventures inspired generations of loggers, adventurers, and storytellers who kept the legend alive. Even today, when the northern lights dance across the sky, some say that if you listen closely, You can hear the distant sound of laughter and the mighty bellow of Babe the Blue Ox, reminding us all that no matter how tall the tale, the spirit of adventure lives on. The legend of Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox is a testament to the power of storytelling. These tales, filled with humor and larger-than-life characters, have been passed down through generations, each adding their own to the adventures of the giant lumberjack and his faithful blue ox. Whether you believe the stories or see them as just a bit of fun, there's no denying the impact they've had on American folklore. So the next time you find yourself in the great outdoors, remember the stories of Paul Bunyan and Babe, and know that somewhere out there, in the heart of the wilderness, their legend lives on.